Hello? Can you hear me? Turn it up. Hello? Hello?
Yeah. Hold on, guys. What's up here?
All right, welcome to the Verge. This is Zach Spence, joined as always by Bob Phil and Nick Stevens. This is our first live episode ever. It's about 124 episodes. For us to have a live one, this will not be the last. So we've got a lot coming up tonight, including our end of the season awards. Some special guests, including John Violi, the author of Maximizing Playoff Odds, the Baltimore Orioles newsletter, and Connor Newcomb, the host of Locked On Orioles, part of Locked On Podcast Network. But first, I'm going to turn it to Bob for a quick patron shout-out.
Do we have any picture?
Well, we have our patrons here. You got to shout them out.
That's true.
Yeah.
Patrick Seaman is here. Thank you for your support. Thanks for coming out. I think that's it. Chris as well. And we're also live on the internet on YouTube.
Yeah, so to our regular YouTube and Twitter audience, thank you for tuning in tonight. Hopefully you see this brewery here, Full Tilt Brewing, at 5604 York Road in Baltimore, inspired to come out sometime soon. We'll be joined in a little bit by Dan, one of the co-owners of Full Tilt Brewing, to plug his operation. But first, we're going to dive in real quick into our end of the season awards. This is to recognize some of the best players in the Orioles farm system this year. And we went a little bit different with the categories. There's a typical player of the year, pitcher of the year, but then also breakout player of the year and platinum glove, which there's only one platinum glove winner. We'll get into that in a moment, but first, our player of the year. The finalists were Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westburg, Connor Norby, Colton Cowser, and the winner unanimously was Gunnar Henderson. Now, the Sickle was a little surprised given how good Gunnar was this year at 2 levels of the minor leagues and then at the end of the season in the majors. But all three of us had him first on our ballots. So, Nick, I'm just going to start with you. Your thoughts on what Gunnar Henderson accomplished this year?
I mean, I don't know if I can put into words what Gunnar Henderson accomplished this year. I think when I was coming up with my list, there were 4 or 5 different guys I think you could justify giving this award to, and I wouldn't disagree with any of them. Like Colton Cowser over at Kings, slow starts at Norfolk and Aberdeen, and his final line was just unbelievable. Connor Norby is apparently the best power hitter in this entire farm system, which I don't think any of us saw before the season started. But when I zoom out and look at more than just the stats, but like prospect status, it's Gunnar Henderson for me because I think Gunnar Henderson, shout out to the Bird's Eye View guys. I don't know if they're here yet, but they said it first out loud, and I was thinking about this. But they kind of said, I think Gunnar Henderson might be more special than Adley Rutschman. And Adley Rutschman just put up like a 5.3 F4 season. And so that's no shot at Adley at all, but I think that's how special Gunnar Henderson can be. And so when I look at that, for me, if it was a no-brainer, it's Gunnar Henderson.
Yeah, I agree. I was listening back to our preseason predictions, and we were talking about when will Jordan Westbrook make his major debut, when will Adley Rutschman make his major debut. We didn't really mention Gunnar Henderson in that conversation, and it was a slam dunk that he would come up, and they wanted to manipulate his time enough to get him Rookie of the Year eligibility for next year. I mean, he improved more than any player I can remember covering in our 3 years doing this, coming up 3 years. He ended last year in Double-A. Looked like he'd probably spend most of the year in Double-A, but he blitzed through that competition. He went out to Triple-A, didn't really slow him down at all, and he put up good numbers in the major leagues as well. So he was the easy answer for me.
Move on now to our pitcher of the year, and the finalists were Ryan Watson, Justin Armbruster, and Noah Denoyer. And this is the only category where we finished with the tie: Ryan Watson and Justin Armbruster. So, Bob, I'm going to start with you. Just your thoughts here, because this vote worked out that we actually have a weighted system where it was 1, 2, 3. So the first place finisher got 1 vote, second place finisher 2, and then the third place finisher 1. So on that weighted system, Bob had Armbruster first. Nick and I had Ryan Watson first. But because Armbruster finished second on Nick and I's ballots, we finished at the top. So Bob, what were your thoughts on this result?
It was a 3-horse race for me. I thought the 3 clear contenders for this were Armbruster, Denoyer, and Watson. I would have gone with Denoyer if he would have had more innings, but he got shut down a little bit in the middle of the year and towards the end. But I just thought Armbruster was starting at Aberdeen, and he was just a poor guy in the beginning of the year. But then he worked his way up to Double-A, and he got even better. Barely walked anybody. I don't know. I just feel like he improved his stock throughout the season more and just had a really impressive season. Ryan Watson was right there as well. I mean, he was excellent for Double-A all year. And then when he went up to Triple-A, he was pretty good as well. He was pitching less. I think he was getting closer to his innings limit, working out the bullpen a little bit more, but he still pitched fantastic as well. It was a tough decision. Pretty much could have thrown them up in the air and let them fall where they were, but I went with Armbruster first.
I love that we ended up with co-pitchers of the year because it was difficult for me to make my selection. But my vote came down to Watson for a lot of the same reasons that I picked Gunnar Henderson as the year. Because coming into the year, I don't think any of us had Ryan Watson pegged as a prospect to watch. Even a pitcher to watch in this season. He was a career reliever. He was a reliever at Auburn. He was a reliever most of last year in Delmarva and Aberdeen. And this year, he becomes one of the most, arguably, the best starting pitcher at Pitt before he even went into Norfolk. So for me, I mean, 7-5 record, 3.41 ERA, a 1.07 WHIP, and 100 strikeouts in just 21 walks in 94 games. Like you mentioned, I think that it was the innings limit by the end of the year, so he only got a couple innings with Norfolk. But a couple weeks ago, I think that
You guys are like too close.
a couple weeks ago, I think on an episode, I mentioned one of my first bold predictions for next year is that is Ryan Watson could possibly break camp with the Major League Orioles. I am putting that one out there. So if that happens, then I said it first. But like Justin Armbruster, unbelievable year as well. Just an 8% walk rate in high A, gets promoted to double A. That walk rate dropped to 6%. The slider became a weapon, the fastball is a weapon. I love Justin Armbruster. I love that at the beginning of the season, you had national writers call him just an Oregon guy. And I think even his family started like tweeting like hashtag JOAG. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Is that some like secret New Mexico state type, hashtag or whatever? But it was. I was like, oh, just an Oregon. I got like a week ago. Went right over my head. So I can't wait until Armbruster makes his debut at Kicking Yards. I'm going to be there with a hashtag JOAG t-shirt because he took a big step this year.
So our next category is manager and coach of the year. There was a lot of different down ballot votes here, but the nominees were Roberto Mercado, Brandon Becker, Forrest Furman, Tim Gibbons, and Josh Conway. In the end, we went with Mercado unanimously, the manager of the South Atlantic League runner-up Aberdeen Iron Verge. And Nick, kind of interesting to see how different our ballots were in some respects. For instance, you had Forrest Furman, his pitching coach at Aberdeen second. I had Brandon Becker, the hitting coach at Bowie second. Bob had Norfolk hitting coach Tim Gibbons second. In the end, we all went with Mercado in that top spot.
Yeah, I think when you look at Roberto Mercado and what he did, like this time last year, he was coaching high school baseball or working at a high school, and now he was the high A manager for the Aberdeen Ironbirds. And like, the baseball resume was really impressive, but I mean, I think that just tells you exactly how the organization viewed him to put him as the manager at high A. And then the Ironbirds ended up having one of the best seasons in all of minor league baseball. One game short of a high A championship. My other votes for Herman. Before the season started, I think I mentioned that Aberdeen rotation, that Aberdeen pitching staff, it's like had no big names other than Gene Pinto, right? So I think the more casual fans would look at Aberdeen and say, I'm not going to pay attention to the farm system. Who are those guys? Who is Noah DeNoyer? Who is Justin Armbruster? And then what Forrest Herman did, he's also a new guy to the organization, came over from Cincinnati. So what he was able to do was just fantastic. So that's why I had him second. Peter Van Loon ended up coming up. Brian Watson was with him at the beginning of the year. So I think, Roberto Mercado, just what he was able to do. I think the Orioles found a legitimate coaching star in Roberto Mercado.
Yeah, I mean, he was really good on today's broadcast too. Before I came over here, I was listening to him talk to Jim and Kevin Brown, and just very down to earth. You can see why players might like him. And like you said, he came from nowhere, and Aberdeen was good no matter what this year. He might have had a couple downturns, but he had a lot of turnover on the roster, and he was able to keep them all together, get them to do their best. Tim Gibbons I put up there because I feel like he goes underlooked as far as the hitting development in the system. A lot of guys got to AAA, like Westbrook and Henderson, and maybe had some small struggles, but were able to turn it around. I'm going to have to imagine that Tim Gibbons had a little bit to do with that. And yeah, Josh Conway, man, Bowie, they had a COVID outbreak early in the year and still able to put together a good staff. So coaching altogether was really, really good this year.
Move on now to the breakout player of the year, which was to recognize the player who really did the most over the course of the 2022 season to raise his prospect stock for the future. And there were a lot of good options this year. Daryl Hernandez, the infielder who split this season between three levels and was excellent between all three of them. Delmarva, Aberdeen, and Bowie. Davey Cruz, a young left-handed pitcher, down at Delmarva. Frederick Bencosme, the infielder who was hashtag legendary between three levels this season, including the SCL, low A Delmarva, and high A Aberdeen, and Aaron Estrada, the hitter extraordinaire down in the Summer League. In the end, Daryl Hernandez wins this vote. And Bob, I'll start with you here. I think this is the easy call for the most part for us. We had a lot of breakout candidates, but I don't know that anyone raised their stock quite as much as Hernandez, not just because of the things he's always done well. This is like steady shortstop, hit for average, but we saw him make big gains this year in hitting his power and a better overall plate approach.
Yeah, I think he was a contender for breakout of the year. After last year, we talked about it. Said it might take a year or two, but he did not waste any time. He went back to Del Mar to start the year and played pissed off in a good way and hit his way up to Aberdeen and did even better there to get up to Bowie before the end of the year. It's hard to argue that anyone in the system other than Gunnar Henderson or Connor Ruby raised the stock any more than Hernandez. And also had Frederick Ben Cosme, who was kind of like third on the list when it comes to international talent. Who was going to hit the stateside this year, and he just blew past Michael Hernandez and not Samuel Beside, but he got further than him. And Aaron Estrada could be that guy next year, so I threw him on at the end.
Yeah, Hernandez is one of, if not the most important prospects in this system, in my opinion. He doubled his career high in home runs. He almost doubled his high in doubles. Power and extra base hits were huge for him. He had 18 extra base hits all of last year. After he hit 277 last year, he had a ton of only 18 extra base hits. So that's a lot of steals. This year he had 273. He had 38 extra base hits. And he also finished second in the entire organization with 32 stolen bases, or among non-leaguers with 32 stolen bases. That was second place to Luis Valdez at 71. So maybe if Aberdeen would have had that one more game, maybe he could have caught up to 71. But I just think with Hernandez, like everything had to come from behind the scenes. We've heard a lot of stories about Hernandez that for me, I think the off-the-field stuff is just as important as the on-the-field stuff. We had Brad Seelig on the show earlier this year, and he mentioned that if anyone in the system is going to fail, he doesn't want them to fail because of their makeup. And I think Hernandez has like the ultimate makeup, and is the ultimate guy who you always hear this growth mindset of this organization. And I think Hernandez fits that. From everything we've heard, he fits that perfectly. So. Yeah, I think Hernandez was a fantastic go here, but my vote was honestly for Frederick and Cosme, just because before the season started, I think he was a guy who, like I mentioned on this show, is like an 18-year-old kid who ran fast and bunted. He had cool bunting videos on TV or on Instagram, and so like, thanks for listening to our podcast about this guy, this 18-year-old kid who bunts. Like nobody cared about bunting, but Frederick and Cosme ended up showing he's a lot more than that. So I mean, 842 OPS in Del Mar, but gets promoted to Aberdeen as an 18-year-old kid. So this is a guy who could be a 20-year-old kid in Bowie next year. And also David Cruz. I don't know if you guys talk about David Cruz, but I'm giving like some almost. I hate comps. I think comps are so stupid, but like I get like almost DL Hall vibes with David Cruz. And I think David Cruz could be the same way. He could be a 19-year-old kid pitching in Aberdeen next year, which is fantastic.
Yeah, completely agree. Verge was actually on the show after we had St. John on Marcel just a few weeks ago. Got a lot of insight into Verge's season and get the feeling he's a guy who's going to rise even further in 2023. We'll move on to our Platinum Glove winner, and I'm just going to end any suspense here because I think it's obvious who the Platinum Glove winner is. It's Joey Ortiz, the best defensive shortstop in this farm system. Maybe the best defensive shortstop in all minor league baseball. And what he did to that this year now has him, as we saw on Fangraphs recently, Aaron Longenhagen sat in top 100 overall prospect talk. But he has always been a great defensive shortstop. He continued to show that this year. One highlight reel catch after the other. Nick runs our Twitter account, so I'm going to let Nick kind of describe what Ortiz's defense looks like on a nightly basis.
Imagine the most beautiful art you've ever seen, and Joey Ortiz is better than that. He is honestly probably the best defensive shortstop in all of the league. I have yet to watch anyone better than him. I know Bob is a major fan of Ortiz as well, and I share the same sentiment. Like, I don't care if it's with Baltimore or if he gets traded and it's with another organization. I'm a Joey Ortiz fan for life, and I know he's going to have a fantastic career. We had Adam Palmer a couple weeks ago, and he said, like, this is a guy who, with the bat exploded this year, he's going to be a very successful major leaguer for a long time, and I fully believe that. And I hope it's here somewhere in that Baltimore lineup.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm a Joey Ortiz fan for life, no matter which team he ends up on, whether it's part of a trade or if he makes camp out of spring training next year, he's the starting shortstop. But the thing is, he's obviously an amazing shortstop, but he can do it at second base, he can do it at third base, all over the field. He's making plays, and his bat's backing it up, even though that has nothing to do with the Platinum Glove. But also have Maverick Hanley. Everyone loves pitching to him. And Colin Burns, I'm scared of your dad, so you're number 3 on this list.
So Gunnar Henderson and Kobe Mayo also get votes in this category. And now I'm going to turn it over to Bob before we bring on our first guest tonight to go over our preseason predictions we love to make predictions on this show, but we like to hold ourselves accountable when we screw stuff up, which I actually thought we did a little bit better than I expected with our preseason predictions, but we still screwed some stuff up.
Yeah, we predicted who would graduate from our preseason top 50. Depending on what you mean by graduate, Rylan Bannon and Jemai Jones graduated because they are no longer on the team. And like me and Nick were talking about before we started, we forgot Jemai Jones was in this organization, and he was a guy that we were pretty much counting on at the beginning of the year. So it's strange how fast things change. But Adley Rutschman, Kyle Bradish, Kyle Stowers, Taryn Badra, Michael Bauman, Zach Luther, and Tyler Nevin all graduated. Nick nailed the number. I'm not going to go through all the names, but Nick had 7, I had 9, Zach had 10. So pretty good job there. We also predicted Will Adley Rutschman would be AL Rookie of the Year. We all said no. Zach and Nick had Julio Rodriguez. That'll probably ultimately end up being the case.
No, Julio Rodriguez is not going to. He's going to win Rookie of the Year, but like, can we be honest here and say like Adley Rutschman is the 2022 MLB American League Rookie of the Year? Like, you look at what this Orioles pitching staff was able to do. I don't think there's any question. Julio Rodriguez is going to win because he was in the home run derby. He hits a lot of home runs, but Adley Rutschman is an unbelievable talent, and he should win.
Hard to argue with that. Grayson Rodriguez, will he get top 3 in the AL Rookie of the Year? No, he's not even going to make the Major League, so we can move on from that. Will Kyle Stowers go into 2023 expected to be a starting outfielder? We all said yes with varying degrees of confidence, but how do we feel about that now after 22 is wrapped up?
I feel pretty good about it. I think that if you look at how the Orioles headed into this offseason, maybe Anthony Santander is more of a first base DH role next year. I don't think Austin Hayes is solidified in his spot every day in the outfield this year. So I think unless you see a free agent acquisition or two between now and opening day, Stowers probably competing for a starting job somewhere.
I want to see Kyle Stowers more. Like Austin Hayes, I feel like you can replace his production with a league minimum for you. Like he was barely league average this year. He played in a career high games, which is good for him because the injuries have been such a bugaboo for him. But like, I want to see those glowing blonde locks at Camden Yards every day, and I want to see him try to hit that warehouse. I want to see him try to hit that warehouse from the left side. Like it's frustrating that he wasn't in the lineup more this season. But like before the season, there was a note there that I had 75% confidence, and I think that's because a little bit of part of me was like he's going to strike out too much to find success in the major league. But I want to see him every day in the big leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be counted on as an everyday guy right out of the gate next year, but I think he'll be on the team. He'll be in the mix, and then hopefully he'll earn that spot as the season goes on. Moving on to DL Hall, we were wondering what role will he have when he inevitably makes his major league debut this year. I said a 3-inning reliever, maybe a tandem with Tyler Wells. Zach said an opener. Nick said a starter, and going to lead us to the 2024 World Series. So shout out to that. We wondered, will Gunnar Henderson and Colton Cowser be in the same AAA lineup at some point in 2022? Me and Zach said yes. Nick said no. And the answer was yes, but only because they were in the same lineup for one day, literally one day, August 30th. Surprise players of the year. This is interesting. I think Felix Bautista is probably the real winner here when things are all said and done. I went with Heston Kjerstad in the minor leagues and Ramon Urias in the major leagues. I feel pretty good about that. Nick went with Michael Bauman in the major leagues. He was very confident he was going to end up being the closer on the team. He did pitch in the last day of the season, so something similar. Raul Rangel and Creed Willems for his minor league picks. Zach had Dante Williams and Brian Baker / Nick Westy. That was pretty cool. What made you pick those guys?
I thought that Baker had really good stuff when he showed it this year, especially in the season. Williams, I don't think is fully healthy this year. It went in his best moments, good defender, gets on base a lot. I think that next year could be big for him and Westby. We saw it at the end of last year with the Arizona Falls. That fastball slider combo works well as a left-handed pitcher. The question is going to be, can he adjust the right-handed
How about the disappointing players of the year? Only one of us was brave enough to pick a disappointing minor leaguer. I went with Cesar Prieto. I was nice about it. I just thought he would take some time to acclimate. I thought he would struggle at high Aberdeen a little bit, but he actually crushed it and got to Double A pretty quickly and then slowed down there. So still fairly high on him. But we all liked Austin Hayes as a disappointing player of the year, and I can't see we were wrong. And Zach, you had the infield outside of Ryan Kessel and Ramon Rice would be disappointing. Odor, Gutierrez, Owings, Mateo. I think 3 out of 4 pretty disappointing.
Yeah, and Mateo was so good this year that I feel like I got his question wrong. But I want to go back to your Austin Hayes picks. You all were a little nervous about your futures at BSL after you predicted Austin Hayes would be a disappointing player. How do you feel about that right now?
I remember Austin Hayes was major league debut. He was like the first person from his draft class to get major league, which is amazing. But like I just said, I think you can replace this production with a low-cost free agent. And I know like the Orioles don't need to be worried about low-cost free agents right now. Like they got the paper, but I'm not an Austin Hayes fan. Like we're not really like a hot take podcast, but like that's one of my hot takes. Is like I think he's easily replaceable. So yeah, my other prediction was one of Bowie's starting pitchers. I don't know if Antonio Velez counts, but that was it. But everyone else in Bowie, I think, succeeded. But yeah, Austin Hayes is kind of rough. And if I go back to my surprise player of the year, Michael Baumann, and make another bold prediction real quick, I think Michael Baumann is next year's team. Was surprised breakout guy of 2023. He finished strong this year.
Back to Hayes, even Chris has to admit he's been pretty disappointing, so I'm not that scared. Breakout Player of the Year in the minor leagues, which we were calling the Kyle Stowers Award. We all liked John Rhodes to win this, and Zach throwing out Connor Norby as well. That was a good shot. But I think the guy we talked about earlier in the show, Daryl Hernandez, probably takes that away. And the Gene Pinto Award for the Breakout Pitcher of the Year. Nick went with Moises Chase. I went with Cesar Alvarez. Zach went with Rival Rangel. We all picked the wrong international pitcher. It was Davey Cruz.
Chase finished strong though, and I think that's going to be the exciting thing again next year. Is when we go back to Del Mar, you're going to see a lot of 18, 19-year-old kids repeat Del Mar. And I think that's where you see the true breakout. When you see what Noah Denoyer, Justin Armbruster, Drew Rom, when you see what these guys are able to do at the upper levels of the minor leagues, it gives me a lot of faith that these young kids can do Del Mar next year.
Now we're getting to the major league team. Who will lead the Orioles in wins? Zach got it right, predicting Jordan Lyles. I went with Kyle Bradish, who had 4 wins on the year. Nick had Bruce Zimmerman, who had 2 wins on the year, so congratulations.
Wait, did Bruce Zimmerman lead more than wins? Because if so, I deserve credit for that.
I can't win. The home run leader, we all predicted Ryan Mountcastle, which seemed like an inevitability, but with the dead end ball and the left field getting moved back, plus him, I don't know, he was hitting some bad luck. He hit the ball hard, but just not in the right places. He did not do it. It was Anthony Santander with, 33, 31? In the 30s. The saves leader, we all picked someone else other than Jorge Lopez, who ended up being the answer. Me and Zach went Dylan Tate, and again, Michael Baumann, he was all over it. All-star representatives, Zach had Cedric Mullins and John Means. I had Ryan Mountcastle and Adley Rutschman. Nick had Ryan Mountcastle and Jordan Lyles somehow, and it was, of course, only Jorge Lopez. International Breakout Player of the Year, Zach, you went with Moises Ramirez, who hit his way out of Del Mar fairly quickly and out of a job soon after that. I went with Junior Lara, who never got his feet off the ground in the FCL. And then Nick gets the winner here. He went with Isaac De Leon, who had a really good year, and Frederick Ben Cosme was also mentioned. Hashtag legendary. Skip the 26-man roster. Yeah. Will Jordan Westbrook make his major league debut? Zach was the only one that got the right answer with no. Me and Nick thought he would. How many home runs would Adley Rutschman hit? I said 22. Zach said 15. Nick said 17, but a lot of doubles. That was true. He ended up with 13. what day does Adley Rutschman make his debut? We were all pretty close. Nick took May 16th, I took May 6th. Zach had May 31st. It ended up being May 21st, of course. We predicted the Orioles' final record. Nick had them with 73 wins. I had 71. Zach had 68. We all know that they overperformed pretty darn good at 83 wins.
The one guy who watches the least amount of Major League Baseball was the closest. Just point that out.
We have our World Series predictions, which are still alive for some of us. Nick had Astros over Padres. It could happen. Zach had Dodgers over Rays. That could still happen. I had the White Sox over the Mets. That cannot happen because the White Sox are eliminated. And that's it.
So we'll start out now with our first guest, Dan from Full Tilt Brewing. Dan, come on up, yeah. We have a on here tonight because you have this great bathroom up here on York Road. You're a fan of the show, a fan of the Orioles, so you may also recognize Dan from the can art on Dan's Jams, available here at Full Tilt Brewing and at liquor stores around Maryland. So Dan, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. I hope you guys can hear me. I apologize. I wish the sound was a little bit better. We'll have you guys out a lot, many more times, and we'll key this in a little bit better. I think it helps with people's voices that room, and I tend to be loud. But anyway, thanks for coming out, and honestly, I'm honored to have these guys out. I say give these guys a hand. They did a hell of a job this year. So I've told these guys, I discovered them on Twitter. I want to say in the spring of 2021. I'm a huge baseball fan. I'm a huge Orioles fan. But you know, when your favorite team's going through a rebuild, it's obvious that what you're really watching is in the minor leagues. And I'm on Twitter. I'm looking for good content, and I discovered their page, and they're giving the best content, whether it be nightly recaps of what's going on. The video highlights, it was just awesome. I've shared their stuff out. They don't need me, they're killing it. So I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Dan. And his shirt says Tilt. That's all.
Right. A nice top shirt. But so anyway, I guess I'd rather you guys ask me questions, but I'll ask you a question. Because you're all about my age. I want to say I'm 38 years old. I think that this is the best farm system that the Orioles have ever had. Like, hands down. Like, they've had periods where they had, leaders and a couple other guys. Where they had the Tillman, Arrieta, who am I forgetting? Brandon.
Tillman, Britton.
Yeah,
who you're talking about?
Yeah, but right now, like, they have like the strongest farm system they've ever had, and like you guys are putting content out about that, and it's great to see. So, maybe it's more of a statement.
I do think it's the best farm system the Orioles have ever had, and I think Michael Latta said today that it's the strongest, deepest top 10 he's ever been a part of. He's been with Houston, and they were getting good too, so it's saying a lot. So what do you think of this year? What do you think of this season? Did you have fun? Did they exceed your expectations?
Well, yeah, obviously. I think I was on tankathon.com, like trying to figure out how they were going to get the first pick, no lie, throughout April. And then they ended up pushing for a wild card berth. And I became a believer. I thought they were going to make the playoffs. And, they were like this close. Where they finished 5 games out, roughly. So it was incredible. It was a fun watch. But yeah.
I was say, is Gunnar Henderson your favorite prospect, and how special do you think Gunnar Henderson is going to be?
Gunnar Henderson is my favorite prospect. I don't know if you're just gauging that off of like my retweets of what you guys do, but yeah, like Gunnar Henderson's my favorite prospect. I will say, all apologies. I prefer like middle infielders. Like I think a stud shortstop is like the thing you should have. And I remember I was mad that they drafted Adley. I wanted Bobby Witt. I'll admit it. I will apologize now. I think they made the right call. Like I'm not a scout, I'm just a drunk guy. But I think they found someone better than Bobby Witt anyway, and Kevin Henderson. So that's why they're in charge, and I'm just here spitting hot takes.
All right. Last question. This is a controversial one. What are your opinions on Brandon Hyde? Should he be the guy leading this team to the promised land?
So, I'll say yes. I think he should be the guy. I think it's unfair that like you have this rebuild and you just throw out this poor guy just to take his lumps, and then as soon as like you get actual big league talent, you just say, okay, well now we're gonna get a real big league manager, which means like a retread. I think that's unfair. I think you give the guy like an actual Major League Baseball team, to manage or mismanage, and then judge him off of that. It's just not fair to throw a guy out to the wolves, and as soon as he has something, just be like, okay, thanks for trying. Your record says you suck. Which, like we all know, like a Major League Baseball manager can only do so much. It's unfair.
I agree. Good comment.
But I just want to say thank you for hosting us. And I drove 3 hours to come up here, and I just have to say, just for the beer alone, it was worth the drive. This is an amazing establishment, and I'm happy to come back, and let's have many more live shows in the future.
I agree. Thanks a lot, man. This is awesome.
Well, you're welcome, and thanks to all on our end. And we're working on the acoustics a little bit better. We're used to bands booming out the spot, so we'll figure it out. But thank you so much. And no one came here to listen to me. You got a lot more interesting guests. I just have hot takes. We'll save that for later.
Thanks.
All right, I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Dan, coming on tonight. And we'll go to our first guest now, the host of Locked On Orioles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, Connor Newcomb. So Connor now gets to walk around the outer edge of the tables here to come up and talk to us. We talked to Connor a lot over the years, and this is the first time that we've actually seen him in person. So Connor, nice to see you.
He's tall.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of that, but it's nice to meet you guys in person. We've crossed over many times talking about. I mean, honestly, when I first started having you guys on the podcast, things weren't even looking this bright. It was, especially having Nick on talking about the most tide seasons. He was just trying to coax a watcher AAA baseball team, and now they've got 4 of their top 8 prospects in Norfolk. So things have even changed in that time.
I want to ask, you follow the Major League team a lot more closely than I have, obviously, this season. You podcast daily about it. What is your, and I'm going to give you credit because I remember at the beginning of the year, maybe even last year, I think, you were the first one that were like, hey, this Felix Batista guy is striking out a lot of guys, and the walk rate is like plummeting as he's moving up the organization. And for me, I think I've said before, like, when he was even in Bowie, I'm like, yeah, he's like a 25, 26-year-old guy. He spent about 5 years in rookie ball. He's 24 years old in Delmarva. Yeah, he throws hard, but how many other guys in the system are 6'6" and throw 100 miles an hour and walk a ton of guys? But Felix Batista became arguably a guy who deserves like Rookie of the Year votes. Was Felix Batista your biggest surprise of the season? And if not, what was your biggest surprise this year at the Major League program?
Yeah, I mean, just with how good he was, it's got to be him. I mean, he could have gone through this year as the Orioles' 6th inning guy. He could have had a 3.5 ERA, and we would have said, this is a pretty cool story that he spent 10 years in minor leagues. And he came up to be a major league producer, and all of a sudden, Jorge Lopez gets traded, and he has 15 saves down the stretch. And I think opponents hit 080 against his splitter this year, and he's throwing 103, and he can drop a get-me-over slider for a strike whenever he wants. I mean, this is a different pitcher than we saw for 10 years. I mean, his walk rate this year, the only time it was lower, I believe, was his 4th year of rookie ball, which was 2017. It was the only year he had a lower walk rate, and every other year was astronomically higher. Now, his K rate went down a little bit, but that's because he actually had to get some guys out rather than just strikeouts. Maybe it's a ground outs and some fly ball outs this year, but I mean, he is an incredible revelation, and you hope he can stay throwing this hard. It'll probably help with how big he is, and obviously he's a little older than some other guys, but they can have him around here for 7 years, and The thing with him being this good now is relievers are volatile, but even if he ends up being a setup guy instead of a closer, it's still good.
Yeah, they liked him enough to trade Jorge Lopez, which I know you were not the biggest fan of that trade at the time. How do you feel about those deadline trades now that the season's over? Do you like that any better than you did at the time? Do you think it could have made a difference if we had Trey and Jorge down the stretch? Do you think we would have made the playoffs?
I think at the end of the day, they would not have made the playoffs. I think a lot of that has to do with how talented Toronto is, how talented Seattle is, and just how many players Tampa has on the 30-man they can just call up. I think at the end of the day, like you look at Tampa, they went 2-9 down the stretch. That's almost because they kind of gave up once they clinched. And Toronto was red hot in September, and the Mariners played the easiest schedule in maybe the history of baseball in the month of September. So even if this Orioles team won 86 or 87 or 88, I don't think they were getting in. Now, Cambridge looks good. Honestly, kind of like the younger guys, Rojas and Nunez better. Some insane strikeout to walk numbers. And, I really think that the biggest deal out of all these guys could be Seth Johnson when he finally gets pitching, but it's going to take a while to see that. The Lopez trade, I've cooled on a little bit. A little bit was because of how poorly he performed. Some of that had to do with probably switching cities, different role in Minnesota. He could be non-tendered out there. I was talking to some Twins people earlier where that could happen. The trade, I'm still not a fan of. I think he could have helped this offense, which struggled mightily down the stretch. He meant so much to this team. It probably burned a bridge about bringing him back. He likes Houston. I do know that. But I think Seth Johnson will be the tell of the tale in 4 years.
So, Connor, in the offseason, you tend to break down every part of the roster. It's sort of a four-part series. I've done a couple of picture shows with you, and I have to be honest, it hasn't been a lot of fun. And the kind of players are breaking down. This guy gets a D or a C-, we're not really sure. But is it going to be any different this offseason?
Well, for starters, Dean Kramer, Felix Bautista, Dylan Tate, Ciano Perez, Jordan Lyles, those are all A guys, I think, right now. I mean, and then you go to Kyle Bradish, he's up there as well, obviously a rough stretch kind of in the middle of the season. But you look at the roster, and, we kind of grade these guys off of expectations. There are not a lot of guys who performed worse than expectations. If the guys who performed worse than expectations, I'm not going to talk about because they're off the 30-man roster at this point. And so anybody who pitched well, you had guys like Brian Baker. I guess I know he's a controversial figure among Orioles fans, but Brian Baker threw 13 consecutive scoreless innings to end the season, and he was their 4th to 5th best reliever this year. And so all these pitchers, even Jordan Lyles was fantastic. Spencer Watkins pitched way better than we thought. Honestly, the hitters were a little more negative this year, but the pitchers, all in all, that's the reason this team is over 500.
I got a question because we've got a couple comments. Nick Vespi finished AAA 28-something innings without an earned run allowed in AAA. He did have a lot of time in the major leagues. You saw him pitch earlier today, getting called up as a 26th man or 27th man for today's doubleheader. When we posted, I saw a lot of comments like, he's your classic 4A guy. What do you think the future holds for Nick Vespi? Does he have a future with the Baltimore Orioles?
I think it's a little telling they didn't protect him last year. I think they see him a little more expendable than some other guys. However, he's on the 40-man roster. They made the point to not call him up for a 5th and final time at the end of the year, so they didn't have to potentially option him, which they wouldn't have been able to. They would have had a DFA. So they called him up to be the 29th man, and that didn't matter. So they obviously, he goes into this offseason much better standing. It's going to be tough to get to that bullpen next year because you have a lot of holdover guys who pitch well, and then you have these Ryan Watson types, the Mike Bowman types, who are going to become the next crop of the starters turned relievers who get into the bullpen. Mike Elias is going to be picking up more guys on waivers, but I think they're going to keep him around. If you can throw 89 and get that guys up at the major league and AAA level, he's got good stuff. He could be, if the Orioles really add this offseason, he could be part of that crunch. But if they don't add 5, 6, 7 legitimate impact players, I think he's at least here in 2020.
Another one, what are we going to do with him type of question. Jorge Mateo broke out this year in a pretty good way. One of the best shortstops in the game defensively. Got hot for a couple months there, cooled off again towards the end of the season. If the Orioles are going to be competitive next year, can they go another year? Can they win him as the starting shortstop every day?
I think he has to be on the team. I mean, Mateo is going to be a finalist for the Gold Glove at shortstop in the American League. He also led the American League in stolen bases. So just for that, they have to have that player on the bench. Not only can he play short, he showed in a pinch he can play second. He has experience in the outfield if he needed to be your utility guy. And just to pinch run and play defense, he's there. And, you know, if you make that big splash shortstop signing, which I think they should, and you put Gunnar Henderson at third, and, you know, you have, whether it be, you know, Norby or Westberg or Rodriguez or someone at second base, Mateo on the bench is a weapon. And that's what a lot of guys on this team, I think, maybe don't possess, is, I don't know if Ramon Rodriguez on the bench is a weapon. You know, I don't know if even Kyle Stowers on the bench is a huge weapon. I don't know if Austin Hayes on the bench is a weapon. Jorge Mateo off the bench is a weapon. So even if he's not the opening day starting shortstop, which he could be if they don't sign a Trey Turner or Carlos Correa, he's got to be. I mean, he's got to be on the team. And I think he stays on the team all year because he's just so valuable in the other things that he does.
Shifting gears, looking at the outfield, we just talked about this before you came on. Austin Hayes, who's alluded to, not a run off the bench, didn't have the best season. Kyle Stowers in the mix. Anthony Santander made it through, was not traded. Cedric Mullins looks like the starting center fielder next year. But then you have Colton Cowler right about the second play. How do you think the outfield situation shakes out between now and spring training and maybe in the early part of next year?
Yeah, we'll say for Cowser, I don't think he's in the mix for the opening day. So at least they have a little bit of time. And they got a group of guys who they're going to have to make some decisions on. And it's interesting because we had the same conversation last year. And this conversation included Stowers, it included Robert Neustro, it included Yusniel Diaz, and some of those guys are kind of out of this conversation. Mullins is there. I was kind of on the train of, they probably trade Santander this offseason. Can you trade the guy that led your team in home runs and hit that well? Maybe not. And so Austin Hayes kind of becomes the odd man out, and he also didn't play well enough down the stretch where he is a trade piece himself, where maybe when you go get a pitcher, and maybe if it is Pablo Lopez, you can sell Austin Hayes to the Marlins as like, maybe he's not your long-term fix, but if you put him in your outfield, your lineup is going to be better. Now, it's a product of the Marlins offense being putrid and their outfield being horrible, but you can sell that to at least being another piece. I still think they could sign an outfielder. Maybe not an everyday guy, but a guy who helps you more in a platoon role than maybe Hayes does. And you can maybe move on from a guy like Austin Hayes. It's unfortunate, and I can still see it being on the bench, but I mean, maybe does Ryan McKenna help you from the bench more than Hayes does? Theoretically, yes. So he's kind of in a spot.
I like John Peterson, someone like that. Pretty Bellinger, if he's not tenured, maybe.
I've thrown out Joey Gallo. Some people have not been happy with that, but
my last question is, do we ever figure out who won the draft that we did before the season started?
that is a great question. Who got Norby and Gunnar, I think? Yes. It's got to be Zach at that point. I mean, I had feelings about Bautista. I felt good about that, but you get those two guys on one team. I think it's
I can give it to Zach. Congratulations.
That's fine. You guys left me with all like the 18-year-old kids in the Dominican Summer League, but that's fine. I got one more question because I know you are you at least were a staunch DL Hall supporter. And I'm curious, over the last couple of weeks, has your opinion changed at all? And if not, what is DL Hall's role going into next season?
I think he's a starter coming out of spring training. I think they've given that role one chance. Kind of out of nowhere, in a weird plan where he was going right back to AAA. I think they have to give him a chance. And it's going to be interesting because presumably you're going to come in with Bradish, Kramer, and Wells, who all pitch well enough this year to be in the rotation. You're going to have Grayson Rodriguez there. And at some point you're going to get John Means back. And you would think either a free agent or a trade piece is coming in. And that's even leaving out the potential to pick up Jordan Lyles' option. Not a lot of space there. They probably start the year with a six-man rotation. Teams have been doing that a lot for like the first month of the year. That could help out. I just think you have to give them that shot in the major leagues. And if it means that Tyler Wells piggybacks off him, and they each pitch 3 or 4 innings of the game, maybe that happens. But you have to at least let him fail as a big league starter before you move him to the bullpen full time. Because we've seen the last week, he could be Josh Hader, but I want to see if he's Blake Snell first.
All right, so Connor, you're on the air daily, year-round. So tell our listeners tonight where they can find yourself.
Yeah, the Locked On Orioles podcast, wherever you get pods. We still got a month more of daily episodes until the postseason ends. Then we go to 3 days a week. We're on YouTube as well. I will have all of them on in the offseason. I can pretty much guarantee that. And next week we start breaking down player by player, episode by episode, how they did this year and what the Orioles look like going into 2023, which hopefully is liftoff for the Orioles.
I just want to throw out one more thing. If you get mad at Connor, which you shouldn't get mad at Connor, because Connor does great work at Locked On Orioles, you shouldn't be mad at him at all. He gives great insight. But if you are mad at him, don't mention us on Twitter. And don't mention Connor because we don't know what that means. We don't collect each other's fan mail. So the message is not going to get there. So just don't mention us if you're mad at Connor.
Yeah. People get mad at me. I just like Trey Mancini. I think that ends up with a lot of people getting mad.
Well, look, we certainly are not mad at you. So, Connor, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you guys for having me. This has been great.
All right, Connor Newcomb, host of Locked On Orioles, for the Locked On Orioles Network. And we're now going to go to our next guest. He is the author of Maximizing Playoff Odds, the Baltimore Orioles newsletter. His work has also been seen in the Baltimore Sun and the Baseball America Top 30 Prospect Handbook. Here he is, John Beal.
Has the big news made it up here yet? My Instagram got hacked while I was sitting there. Unbelievable.
I did see that. Barstool Eric, Bitcoin match.
Yeah. I'm unfortunately not Bitcoin rich. I'm just, humanity rich by being here.
Your haircut says you can be in the Bitcoin. You wrote an article for Baseball America, I think came out today, about Joe Ortiz. That was very interesting, very good work as always. What are your thoughts on the way he ended the year, and do you think he put himself in the conversation enough to have a chance to win a job at his pitcher next year?
I think so. I mean, you're talking about someone who, this conversation in June, you're talking about a player who wasn't having a very good season by any accounts. I mean, he was disappointed. I know the organization, because of what they feel about him and how they feel about him as a player, was disappointed. And when you see someone break out like he did, and there's a material change in what they were doing to make it so that all of a sudden they have like an OPS that starts with a 1 for 3 months of a season, that makes it real. I'm putting together, the BA top 10 right now, and that's the person I'm asking questions about and getting that kind of feedback on. I saw someone, I think it might have been, I don't know if it's Fangraphs or ESPN, had him in like the top 100 prospect. But if you play a legitimate big league shortstop, then you hit the ball the way he is. I think you're talking about a person who is truly in that conversation. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to, you would assume, get added to the roster. If he's not on the Orioles roster next year, and he doesn't get protected, he's going to be Row 5. I mean, Richie Martin got Row 5. So you assume Jordan Ortiz could. So he will be in a big league camp, and I think by virtue of that, if you can do what he's done, you're absolutely talking about someone who can be in that mix.
So, your newsletter this year, you had fantastic articles on Ortiz, Colton Cowser, so many guys in this organization. And for me, like, my biggest takeaway after watching this all season long, reading your stuff, which is the most insightful, I think, of any minor league coverage out there. My biggest takeaway was that, like, the Orioles have really established minor league coaching staff, player development systems, the entire organization, one page, one goal, one mindset. And my biggest takeaway is that this is sustainable. Everything they're doing is sustainable for the future. And, we're seeing some success at the major league level. I think you had the article about, teaching sweepers and stuff like that with the pitchers. And then, Justin Armbruster, Noah Denoyer, Brendan Hannafy, a lot of these guys in the minor leagues, we're seeing that replicated. So for me, it just seems like they've identified what works, what doesn't. And, it's working starting to work at the major league level, and replicating that at the minor league level, and having success up and down the levels of the minor leagues. That was my biggest takeaway. And I'm just curious, you got to talk to a lot of people this year, a lot of players. What are some of your biggest takeaways, overarching organizational, from an organizational point of view? What are some of your biggest takeaways from this 2022 season?
I think a lot of the things you said are correct, and I think that the way they've done it is really fascinating to me. It's no secret, how to be an effective pitcher in the big leagues and develop effective pitchers. There's a ton of data. We're going on a decade of this being, public and knowable and doable if you want to develop pitchers this way. And hitting is a little farther behind that, but the Orioles have a plan they really believe. I think where they have found maybe an advantage is that they're doing all that stuff and they're having, teachers, literally teachers in some cases, and people who teach in other cases execute that and help players understand that. There are players in the organization, some of the players you mentioned that we talked about, who haven't fully embraced this as this has been presented to them. The way that teachers work is that they know the answer, and they need to get the student to that answer. The student, the teacher say it all the time that the teacher appears where the student leads them to. And I think there's actually Ryan Fuller who told me that last year I was talking to him, and he's a teacher, and he's now a big league hitting coach. So I think that what they really have found an effective mix at is to be able to know what kind of pitch works in a big spot and how to develop that pitch, or what kind of work needs to be done to flatten out a swing to cover high riding fastballs. And they know the technical skills, but they also have people in place who can teach that. And I think that's something that should be more recognized as this season kind of comes to a close. It's very hard to do. Being with the affiliates at the times I was, it's a grind. And I think that part of the reason the players were able to do what they did this year is because of talent. They've drafted really good players, but I think they've also done a really good job of teaching and instructing and coaching those players. And that's probably the main takeaway.
So one of the players Nick mentioned, I think, was actually the subject of one of your best articles this year, which was Noah Denoyer was an undrafted free agent. This is going back to drafted 40 rounds, not 20-round draft, and a 5-round draft in 2020. So for our listeners, just to recap, how the Orioles actually found him in the first place.
Yeah, so they sent their Midwest scout, he was a video scout at the time, Ryan Carlson, to the Northwoods League with a list of players that the analytics team had come up with who were there. I think they had some kind of idea that Noah Denoyer was like a signable player and he was draft eligible, even though it wasn't really something that was on the radar. He was a junior college pitcher, very infrequently pitched every season. He was going to get his 20 innings. He was going to go to Oklahoma State and have a really good time there, I assume. And it's one of those scouting moments that you hear scouts talk about all the time. And they're like, wait, am I seeing something that's like real? And then also why isn't anyone else considering this? And he was a player whose metrics obviously lined up with what the Orioles were doing. They signed him. They gave him the opportunity. He's a different pitcher now. They scrapped him to a seamer like the day he got into the organization. He changed his slider to a sweeper, which has helped everybody. He had been tinkering with his changeup and made it a splitter right around the time he had signed. But we're talking about someone who now throws in the mid-90s with a real pitching mix. And as we're talking about players who develop and make themselves better, I think he's somebody who has absolutely done that. And I believe he pitched well today in the fall league. Another guy who's eligible to get added to the roster is going to be a really interesting case as we go through the next month or so.
Yeah, what did he have? 5 strikeouts over 2 2/3, giving up a run. In the Arizona Fall League in that throw environment, that's pretty good. I think he's a sleeper to get to the 40-man offseason that we'll see. I want to get your take on the usage of guys like Terry Gabbert and Kyle Stowers to end the year. These are guys who, especially Stowers, we thought once Trey Mancini was traded, he was basically going to get everyday at bats. And it wasn't necessarily the case, but they both ended up playing 30 games and putting up some decent numbers. What do you make of that? Do you think the organization is lower on the public at large, or they're just easing into things and they're still believers?
I don't know that it says anything about how they're viewed by the organization. Obviously, everything from how players are promoted to how they're where they stand when they're on the outfield to how the lineup is made is a very collaborative process. In a weird way, I feel like something like that, especially with Stowers, when you have an Austin Hayes there, who carried the team for a month, 6 weeks, 2 months. You have a Rudy Odor who won probably 5 of these 83 games they won single-handedly.
How many did you lose?
I know there are people who will tell me how many they lost, and there's probably more of this. I think it was a situation where because it wasn't a slam dunk, you're not replacing somebody who's not playing well with Gunnar Henderson. I think that because there was a little more parity in like the players and what they could bring versus the players that were there, that it was a little more of a balance. But Kyle Stowers, once he kind of started playing, he had like an 8 9 something OPS since when he got in. I think that it's more of a process. I think that I talked to Kyle Stowers yesterday about it and wrote about it, and I think it was a process for him, but it's not wasted time when you are not playing in this organization. I think that him and Taron Bobber are players who really value, the program that they're in. Mixed batting practice from Ryan Porter and Matt Porter is not big league pitching, but you can stay sharp and you can work on the things you need to work on. So that in the cases of these players, when you do get into the game, you're not swimming, you're not overwhelmed because we're seeing those challenges every day, whether it's game or not. So it was unfortunate. It was kind of weird. When we look back at the season, I think that there are probably people inside and outside the organization who wonder if, if those players have played more, if this is a different day, and there's more baseball. I don't think it's necessarily that extreme. I think it's definitely. I think it's one of those things where I think back on it. It's going to be a little strange.
I wanted to ask about Colton Cowser, just because I know you've written about him a lot, and he's someone he was the draft pick. I don't think a lot of people really like that pick. And even when you look at national prospect rankings, I don't think a lot of those national lists are even big fans of him. I feel like he's got that underslot stigma attached to him. But you look at what he was able to do. This is his first pro season, and he finished in AAA, and he finished on an incredible hot stretch over there in AAA. What kind of player are we looking at here with Colton Cowser when he finally reaches the big leagues, do you think?
I think that's a really interesting question. I mean, as you're saying, there's not a lot of national excitement or buzz around him. I feel like it was probably a week into the season that a scout posted was seeing Aberdeen. He just texted me man, this guy's so boring. And he didn't mean it in a bad way. It's just he he runs the bases, he catches what's hit to him. He'll take a walk. He'll lace balls into the gap the other way. He'll pull sometimes. And at that point in the season, that's what he was. He was not. We're still trying to find a balance of being a pro hitter and play baseball every day and figure out when to go to sleep and how to live when you have a baseball game every night. So there's a lot of adjustments with his own hitting plan versus what the organization was going into and everything. And I feel like everything started to turn around come June, and then July you got promoted to Bowie and just kind of went crazy. And it's really interesting. It's going to be very interesting when we're talking about Cowser and Norby and Joe Ortiz, all these guys, to think about how those second halves in Bowie are viewed. I mean, it's a half a season, it's 2 months we're talking about, but they're too early. They're it's very impressive what these players did. So I think Cowser specifically is someone who that is more the player he is than the guy who kind of struggled in Norfolk. I think there might end up being a little more swinginess to his game than anyone kind of expected when you're talking about a pure hitter like he is, but he's someone who I believe he's going to be in the big league next year in all reality. I mean, he's not going to get 600 at bats in AAA. That would be very surprising if that happens. And then you're talking about what does he want to do? Does he want to be the top of the order table setter and hit the ball the other way and get on base and walk, or does he want to tap into his pull power like he did at Bowie and be a guy who wants to power? Some guys can't do both. I'm not sure a lot of guys can do both. I'm not sure he can do both, but he can do a lot. And I think it's really interesting for him to have the season he's had and have that be unclear. I mean, he is a special, talented hitter. He has a lot of talent in his bag. It's just a matter of what it's going to be. It's not going to be something bad. It's just a matter of, it's really interesting for someone to get to that stage and not know it.
Talking about a guy that tapped into his pull power a little bit this year, Jordan Westbrook. A lot of ups and downs this year, but overall strong finish of the season. Ends up as minor league player of the year. Do you think that there's a role for him with the Orioles next year, or early in the season at least?
I would assume that he will be in the mix and he will be a player who is in big league camp until right at the end, and then there's somebody who, whether it's an out of option player that comes up with waivers or something like that, and it doesn't work out. But I don't think it will be long for him in Norfolk. I think there's a lot of excitement about what he was able to do this in the organization. Where he had the amount of extra hits he had on the pro ball was borderline unparalleled. You're not allowed to talk to people in the organization. And he did that with 2 months where he was really not good. We're talking about 4 months out of a 6+ month season where he was not terribly productive, and he still goes close to the lead in home runs and those ended up being the player of the year. I think a lot of that has to do with what happens around him. Where does Jorge Mateo fit in? Where is there going to be an infielder brought in to kind of put butts in the seats, as Michael Elias kind of said tonight in his press conference. I don't think a lot of that has to do with Jordan Westburg. I think there's a lot of belief in what he can do, but his future and it's an unfortunate position for him to be in. I don't know that it's in his hands.
I don't know if you were able to talk with Drew Rom at all this year, or how many starts you were able to watch of his, but I think I mentioned off air after we recorded last week's episode that I said if there's one player in the system who I want to succeed more than anyone else, it's Drew Rom, just because very few people seem to be Drew Rom fans. And really, the pitching as a whole in this organization, I know we get dumped on a lot for hyping up the pitchers in the system, and fans of so many arms in the system. But Drew Rom is Rule 5 eligible this year, so he could be added to the coordinator roster in December. Does he have a role in the major leagues? Do you think?
I think so. I saw him on opening day in Bowie. It was a short start because it was opening day. I don't really remember a lot of it, and I never got down there to see him since I didn't talk to him. But it's a challenge to be that kind of pitcher in the big leagues. I think he throws a little bit harder than a Zach Loud and now everybody else. So I think that we're talking about a different profile and a little bit more stuff and more variety. I mean, you talk about people in the organization, how many pitches he has. There's no set number. It could be 5 one day, it could be 7 because he could drop down his arm slot and have a couple more pitches for that. I just think it's very, very challenging to do that. He knows that. I did talk to him last year towards the end of the year, and he said he would watch, Alex Wells and Zach Loud, they're pitching the big leagues to say, okay, if this is the kind of stuff that I have, and Giancarlo Stanton or Aaron Judge is in the box, this is how you need to attack them. This is how you need to do that. And I thought that was really interesting that he kind of understood that because it's really hard to do that. We saw with those guys over the course of the last 2 years that it's hard to pitch with that kind of profile in the big leagues. So the flip side of that is that until you prove that you can't, you get a chance to prove that you can. And he went to AAA and he pitched well, and he's going to, soon enough, if he keeps pitching the way he is, get that opportunity. I just think it's challenging, and the track record of that is difficult, but as long as you do it, you get a chance to keep trying to do it, and I think he's the best at that.
All right, so season's over. It's time to look ahead to 2023. We've got quotes from Michael Elias like, "We have liftoff." It's on my shirt. The sky's the limit. We're opening up the pocketbooks. We're right there with the AL East. How realistic is it? What do you envision the offseason being? Are we trading some of these top 10 guys? Are they what kind of guys are they looking to sign and trade for? Are we looking at Carlos Correa, a 10-year deal, or are we looking at a couple guys on shorter-term deals and maybe a trade for a starting pitcher?
I would say it's probably the latter. I think it's going to be a real fascinating mix to see how it plays out. And I was kind of thinking about that as Michael Elias was talking today at Camden Yards. There are a lot of different ways to do what they need to do, and there probably aren't wrong ways. There's probably a mix, but you can't count on, we have 4 infield prospects in AAA, so we don't need to sign an infield. You can't count on that. Not everyone's going to come up with Gunnar Henderson did, the way Natalie Rushman did, what's infield. I think they know that. I think that the presence of those players will be challenging to say, I'm going to commit a boatload of money in years to a player when we could have alternatives, in player X, player Y, player Z. So I think the solution to that is to trade them. I think that if you want to thread the needle, you take, an infielder or two, and make those pitching trades that way. And then you don't have that fallback if we have 4 infielders in Norfolk that we like. So we need to shore up that part. So I think there's a way to do it. I would be very surprised if there's huge financial commitments to free agents, just given that everything that's happening in the organization off the field. I think it's a challenging time for that still. But I would be very surprised if nothing happens. I think they know that they need to do that. I think it would be frustrating, given how quickly people turn from this is a rebuild and this is going to take time to why doesn't Andy Rushman catch 7 days a week because we want to make the playoffs? I think the speed at which that happens registered. So I don't think it's going to be a very work at the margins off season. I think they're going to make some core moves, but I think it's a balance. I think there's going to be just as many prospects that are in the mix to contribute as there are guys who we can't even fathom right now, whether it's rotation, infield, stuff like that.
Yeah, it felt like with Adley Rutschman not catching, it would be, why isn't Adley Rutschman catching today? Well, it's because the Orioles are off today. No one's catching today. But speaking of that, you get the sense now that this is his team. This is the player that you have brought along to be the face of the franchise. There was a dramatic turnaround when he got to the major leagues this year. Do you think that there is a possibility of an extension sometime, let's say, the next 12 months?
Without a lot of confidence, yes, I think that's something that you want to explore. I feel like he's probably a month away from getting, from being like on the rookie of the year ballot and having that influence his career in a significant way. That's going to change the equation for the Orioles and for him. I think that if there is a player, if we're talking about like a cornerstone type guy, who might be able to do it. I think that the ship might have sailed with Gunnar Henderson. This offseason we signed Scott Boras, and I think there's people in the organization who believe in doing that. Also helped him become a big leaguer at 21 and become the top prospect in baseball. So fair play for everyone there. But I think that Adley Rutschman would listen. I think the Orioles would have to come up with something legit. And are they going to be able to do that when we're talking about the potential sale and potential, all the stuff going on with ownership? I think it's kind of messy. I don't know what kind of money is available for that, but if you're going to spend that money on something, I think it would be a fantastic way to do it, to spend it on, securing out the Russia.
Yeah, you're all coming in here. All right, so just to kind of get your thoughts on this, Severin Mullins did step back a little bit this year from what he did last year, but overall still a good player. The Orioles have 3 years of team control left. What do you see from him going into next year?
I'm fascinated to see kind of how he comes out of this. I don't think there's anything about his offseason or his preparation coming off of a good season that would have that influence what he did. I think that it's a really tough place to be in a weird way, to be almost unprecedentedly successful doing something that no one's done in a really long time, which is stopping the switch hit. Like, I would be fascinated to know what he thought he needed to work on this time last year versus what he knows that he needs to work on. He stopped switch hitting as a big leaguer. Like, there is self-awareness there. There is like understanding of what he needs to get better at. He showed that and he became an all-star for it. So I think that he's probably going home right now with a really clear understanding of, like, this is how I was attacked. He knew that early in the season once he started getting attacked. He was like, okay, I need to fix X, Y, and Z because this is how I need to pitch. So I think that he will be going home and is probably on point right now if he's not flying out tomorrow morning to say, hey, this is what I need to do. I know now. That was challenging. I still played good center field. I still stole some bases. It wasn't an unproductive year, but it wasn't the year that I'm capable of. So I think that there's probably better for him. But once you get into this range of, arbitration eligible, once you start talking about those kind of things in this organization, at least until they show that it doesn't matter, it matters, because there's not a lot of players who, are arbitration eligible who end up running for very long.
I've got one more question, and being a minor league podcast, so it's going to be a minor league focus here. You watched, I imagine, a lot more games this year. Got to talk to a lot more guys this year than in some of the years past, covering the Major League squad for Baltimore Sun every day. But is there a guy who you watched or you talked with, some of your sources, and you think is getting overlooked? A guy that maybe should be highlighted a little bit more?
This is kind of weird to say, because he's a big leaguer and he was player of the year last year, but there's been a weird Pals Towers ratio. I'm probably guilty of that myself. I think that his season, statistically, even though he's a year old, he had the experience. Statistically a better season rather than the most by OPS. I don't know about the expected stuff. I don't know about the stuff under the hood, but talking to people in the organization that I have, there's a real recognition of the difficulty of improving in the ways that he did this year. It's not easy to be a power hitter and say I need to cut down on my strikeouts and swing and miss and do that and not lose that power. I think Dallas Towers is also someone who has a lot of the mental traits and the physical stuff they look at. And I'm sitting here saying this as someone who, is in the midst of putting together like the baseball America top 10, and like I don't know where he's going to go in that, so I don't know where he fits in that kind of like next tier. But I think that because he was in the big leagues, and I don't think he's actually rookie eligible, he's eligible for the baseball America rankings though. I think that he's someone who really who just because he's not Adley Rutschman, not Gunnar Henderson, and not the next wave. He's kind of been like smushed in the middle of them, and I think that I'm interested to see how the rest of the industry kind of views that as this offseason goes forward.
My last one is who will be next year's players that are the Jemai Jones, Terry Bauer, Kyle Stowers, call them up over and over again. May, June 2023. Who's the guys that are going to be like demanded to be called up to the major leagues?
All of them. I mean, I hope that the Grayson Rodriguez and DL Halls of the world are starting in the big leagues in short order. I hope that happens in April, just because that would be really fun to watch. I assume that the level of adjustability and how Colton Cowser and Connor Norby have kind of improved. I assume that whatever amount of bats that are earmarked for them in AAA next year will be more than any Orioles fan wants to see. I also think that there's going to be eventually like that interesting wave of pitchers that are kind of behind now. I think there's going to start to be those types too. I mean, the beauty of having like a lot of guys with sweet sliders and like pocket fastballs is like those play out of the bullpen really, really nicely. So I think you're going to start seeing something we haven't seen in a long time, which is like, hey, why don't we just get this guy up here like pitching wise? And usually for the last 3 years before this, it was like who's alive, like who's available today and who's alive. Like maybe they can get us through the 7th inning. This year it was a little different. Good pitchers got sent down and called up, but I think we're going to get to a point soon where there's going to be like legitimate bullpen pieces or guys who can help the bullpen if there are already filters in that category. And that'll be an interesting wrinkle to add to the discourse.
So, John, we always appreciate your insight. Thank you for coming on tonight. Now, thanks for your heads up. We know we should not buy Bitcoin off of your Instagram, but we should subscribe to your newsletter. So, let us know, let our listeners know where you can get your newsletter and what the differences are between the free and paid for version.
Yeah, so it's called Maximizing Playoff Odds. It's on the Substack platform. I think my Twitter is still not hacked, but I usually tweet out all the articles at John Mioli. It's johnmioli.substack.com. We do one free article every week, 2 or 3 paid ones. I think that it's still going to be really, really interesting as the offseason goes on. I have a couple like project type things planned. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate your guys' support. I know that what you guys do is a grind. I'm fascinated to know like the inner workings of like who's watching the games when and like how it all works. It seems like it's a lot, and I appreciate you guys always supporting and plugging in situations like this. But I think that it's a really cool time to be doing the kind of work that you guys are doing and the kind I'm trying to do. So I appreciate all the support. And do not buy Bitcoin from me. Don't take investment advice otherwise, but do not buy Bitcoin from that link on my Instagram.
Well, John, thank you so much for coming on tonight, and we love your newsletter. So, John Mioli, the author of Maximizing Playoff Odds, Baltimore Orioles newsletter, available now through Substack. And here, Bob, I will switch mics real quick. Nick, I just wanted to point out, because you mentioned that we catch some heat for hyping up Orioles pitching prospects. I just want to take a quick second to remember the time that we caught so much heat for talking about the minor leagues.
I mean, I can't believe that we started this podcast in February, late January, early February, or whatever, of 2020. And so we started a minor league focused podcast, and then the pandemic hit, and there was no minor league season for a whole year. So the main subject of our podcast did not exist for the first year of its existence. And now we're one of the top baseball podcasts in the United States of America, listened in 75 countries. And so I think it's amazing what we've done and the people who follow us.
So before we wrap up tonight, we do have a couple of shirts over here to give away. They are shirts that a listener named Chris dropped off. And you go on group1apparel.com and enter promo code Chris8. You get a discount. But we do have a couple of XL shirts here, and Nick's going to hold it up.
Does anybody wear XL? It's a grade 8. It's got Ovechkin, Lamar, and Cal Ripken on there.
Here, I'll put my dress.
Oh, that was
I'm not a great 8.
That was a complete
Anybody
airball.
else? There you go. There you go. Yeah, check out their website.
All right, so Bob, any final thoughts here?
Thanks everybody for coming out. It's a lot of fun. Thank you, Dan, again. Yeah, we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope to have a live show sooner than 2.5 years from now. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at BSL The Verge. We're going to be on the air every week this offseason with the latest Orioles minor league coverage. Also, be sure to check out BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com for the latest Orioles, Ravens, and yes, the Ravens need to get better in the fourth quarter. That's a separate topic for another day. College sports and more. Check out the message board and join in discussing with fellow readers of the site as well as contributors to BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com. Thank you to the staff here at Full Tilt. Please be sure to tip your servers well and do not break up the 4-packs in the fridge. For Bob Bill and Nick Stevens, this is Rob Scott. You've been listening to them.
See what we got here. Yes.
We have a black marker.
Sign that shit. They need a silver marker or black. I always lose on the white socks.
Seems that way. Seems that way. Because that just got built last weekend.
Only thing is, it's definitely hard to,
No, I agree. Do it again, we'll get it.
I can't
Well, it did help. Yeah, it did help if like the voices come out. Like we can do better. No, I felt terrible about it. No, but I did. Yeah, it was great.
Are you gonna pay monthly? $3 for $5? $10?
Sorry. Oh, Vanessa, you're on YouTube. Wave. Is this still going? Is this still recording? I hope it is. Yeah, it is.
Let me get on the Verge in there.
You're all on camera. I think it's still on.
Sorry about this weekend. Yeah. I want you to hear it again. Like it. So the reason why I'm doing this. What are you doing?
It's $20 a shirt, guys. I mean, Mom bought the shoes. And trying to keep his head, my shirt. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, you guys have the same line?
Yeah, I mean, we're going We'll get it back. We'll have to do it.
That's probably my favorite. If I have to pick any of them. I guess they're like whichever one you want.
I see like this one the best.
I don't like this one.
It's got a carnival.
Oh, a park ranger? Yes. I don't know how to get that. Yeah.
All right, see you, buddy. Thanks for coming. See Sunday. All right, we're at least going to do great. This is over the rest of our day. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. All right.
What's inside? He wants to get this.
now we're being. Okay, that was also. You remember which brother? It's like my best friend from college. I work together. That's like 5 to 6 years. He's the one. If it looks like the way I know how to sing, so the more basically the one. Yep. Amazing. Yeah. But and then the other one is I don't know basically. I don't think that he was like wearing like an album hat. So they were there at the Olympics. You were there, right? But did you come here after? We all came here. Yeah. Okay, so interesting. Going up to Philly this weekend, we decided all the things about this. So Louis come with me, and then that's better than something. That is like a really thing to see. What do you guys do? Oh, he's awesome. Dude, Hispanic guy. He's top notch. Like, he's fucking hilarious. He's absolutely funny. There was like so like later, and he's just like, he lives in like Russell right now, and he's like, he's like, I never know this it's one of my best friends. His sister was here. She ended up she turned to really fucking nice guy. Literally the nice guy. Oh yeah, I works out so nice. It was it's great. Aggressive guy. And he started being hammered. And he's just like, oh, we're like joking with Nazism, but he was like, it's a nationalist. And he was just like, and you really you got children. He was like, you got children. And
America thinks they're pure. What do they teach you in school? They teach you that you're bad guys. And I'll tell you right now, you're not definitely bad guys, right?
Oh yeah, you were fucking talking about
I was there. It's like everyone's here, like supporting Nazis. He's like yelling at me, like,
yeah, he's
was like, he's like a nice like ball this thing.
No, he just walked in here. Yeah, he just walked over that part. Like, he wasn't, the fighting is like doobie strong. And he wasn't, like, I'm just like, people are shit. Like, people conquer each other. No, I mean, he was saying, yeah, it was a lot of weird shit.
It sounded like he was like a very small town that did like messed up and like extra like.
Yeah, we were sitting in my age. Why? I was like, dude, I wasn't there. That's what I was like, dude, I wasn't there either for you. And he's like, okay, like, what are we talking about here? I wasn't there either for you.
Yelling at me.
Well, I mean, he wasn't. Dude, he's not 100% everything. Like, fireball, but at the same point, it's
Yeah, I'm not saying he's not wrong.
like they also wouldn't like surrender.
But again, I can understand it. Still saying we were bad, but not as bad.
Well, there's also like
Yeah, that's where
ego wins the war. That's very close. That's very close. There is that. There is always that. But even if he was right, he just should shut the fuck up. He wasn't.
No, you are.
So I was like, he was right here, and I just walked up, and he was like, and they're like yelling at each other, and I walked up to get his train, and I was like, and I was like, what if? Yeah, there's like, there's some like conservative, like his whole like. Ben's just a great friend of ours, but he's like a fan of beer, like our best friend. So we're hanging out with us, up in Canada, some videos.
Behind Instagram videos.
I like that one. What do you think? Well, sometimes he does. I always chuckle. It's always easier to go to that. Funny one, because it's down here. Yeah.
That's what I heard talking to everyone.
The thing he did when he pretty good, and then came up with the scene of like
No, it actually is a sore subject. Even to me. Like, no, he deserves it. No, yeah, you're so thanks. No, he deserves it more, but like he also has to like just said like this is what I want. There's like a certain thing of mine.
Well, I don't like you gotta like do like what you want to do. So like all good. So sad. I think mine was yeah, they're gonna have to buy. It's funny, I saw the question. Mine was supposed to be. Yeah, you're Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's good. I mean, seriously, he's still always fucking yeah, they always use those. No, maybe also should put out that. But like, he says that that doesn't do anything for our marketing guys. Probably with because I'm really fortunate that he got to the here. Not for his license and stuff like that. It's like whatever next is available, I could usually just do. It's like that's not like a brewery thing. I go, well, we're also a sports bar too. So when it's sports, just not drinking. You gotta come to sports bar. Hey, it's not nice. Like we'll figure it out. We just take a picture with the game and you get the license and like go on fucking season. These are easy. So easy. And you know, it's a great actually But I would rather watch you do funny shit like in reality. But I just rather watch extreme shit like alright, so twice a birthday shot. Watch that and see like the non-real black kid that like doing that. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a funny fucking cool shit. It's hilarious. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think it is. It is. Because he knows that sound like I don't think he can. Still,